There's no doubt that the American people are fed up with crime in this country. It's a major issue, tops most of the polls in terms of some of the most urgent issues facing voters right now. You know how we know it's a major problem? Joe Biden didn't mention it at all in his State of the Union address. But maybe the problem is the way Republicans actually approach this from a law and order perspective instead of a civil rights perspective. Yeah, that's right. Do you have a basic civil right to live in a safe society? Is that right enshrined in the Constitution? J. Christian Adams is an election lawyer. He's with the Public Interest Legal Foundation, actually worked in the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department under President George W. Bush. And he penned a column in the Washington Times that suggests just that. Christian, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Larry.
So being safe from crime is in fact a civil right.
Right. It's what separates Western democracies from everything that came before it, doesn't it? I mean, we don't have highway robbers. We don't have murder and mayhem on a mass scale. We created a civilization that relies on industry, thrift, civil society, the right to walk down the street with your kids and not be stabbed, the right to ride the metro or the New York City subway, the right to run a business, right? And not be looted like's happening in cities across the United States. And usually, often, it's by left-wing mobs doing it.
Well, and we certainly see this in Washington, D.C. right now, where the district council has just voted to rewrite their crime laws, the legal code, and it basically reduces penalties for violent crimes like carjacking and rape. And now this is going to go under review from the House of Representatives, since they do have the right to veto some of these things, since this is not a state, the District of Columbia. Is this sort of the approach Republicans should take as they debate this issue, saying, no, that every American has a right to come to the federal Capitol and not worry about losing their life?
Yeah, I'm on the United States Commission on Civil Rights. As a presidential appointee, I'll be there through 2025. We and my fellow Republican commissioners view it as a civil rights issue because it's affecting minority communities way worse than it's affecting suburbia, Loudoun County or Buckhead, or
Wilmington, Delaware, for that matter, when the president. Right. President retreats from this town every weekend to get to Delaware because, listen, who wants to stay in a crime-ridden city like D.C.?
Yeah, somebody was beaten to death on the Ellipse just outside the White House during morning rush hour. That's in my Times piece. And look, Larry, it affects minority communities way worse than it does the rest of the country. At least I think so. And that's why the Civil Rights Commission, 4 of us wanted to examine this question, is how does reducing the crime penalties in D.C., how does it affect the minority communities in D.C.? It's bad.
Yeah. The challenge on this, though, of course, is left-wing politicians who utilize civil rights as one of their every other talking points. They think that civil rights when it comes to criminal justice only involves reducing sentencing, cashless bail, basically things that favor the suspect, the criminal.
And that's exactly what the dynamic was on the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights for the last 2 years, is there were 3 radical members of the commission who thought that criminals should get out on bail cash-free, the police are bad, and therefore civil rights means reducing the effectiveness of law enforcement. I don't believe that. I think good law enforcement protects minority communities in a more urgent way than it protects suburban communities or rich communities, because these are the people who have to put up with this garbage night in, night out. And that's why when things go haywire like they are all over the country, they feel it first.
So, I mean, we've seen the left in this country over the decades utilize what's commonly called lawfare. If you can't get legislation passed, you take a big entity, even a municipality, to court, you sue them, and then you work out some sort of settlement that effectively changes the law. Is that what business owners need to do when there's a riot in downtown for Black Lives Matters or what have you, and the local cops are told to stand down? Do they need to start suing on behalf of their civil rights to operate a business? Or people who live in a neighborhood that's been overrun by crime, do they need to sue on behalf of their civil rights to live in a crime-free area?
Yeah, I think that would be a great thing to start to have happen, because it's time to put pressure on these urban politicians who are letting things like that happen. They're letting their communities devolve into some kind of apocalyptic, dystopian hellhole. And look, these burned out police cars that you've been scrolling, That's the trophy of the left. That to them is like getting the big prize, the Lombardi. And when you can burn out a police car, that's what they thrive on. They love to destroy institutions. That's what they've been doing since at least 1917 and maybe earlier. So it doesn't surprise me that these large cities have let their citizens just fall victim to this nonsense. The looting of Wawas in Philadelphia, the pushing people in front of New York subway trains. Just a week ago or two, the Washington Metro, a guy strolled through the Potomac station shooting people. I mean, this wasn't going on in this country, and it's not COVID. It's not the economy. Something else has gone haywire.
So governments have a legal obligation, especially since we pay taxes under the guise of law enforcement and district attorneys, Commonwealth attorneys, states attorneys, to actually enforce the law. They have a legal obligation to the citizenry to enforce these laws and to keep the streets safe. When they fall down like that, when it breaks down and they sort of say, well, criminal justice reform, and you see these Soros district attorneys who have decided not to enforce the law just on their own, regardless of whether it's written in the code or not, is that the only recourse? I mean, how can a citizen or a business owner stand up and say enough is enough?
Yeah, that's the problem. Is look, I'm a lawyer, and there's a general concept of sovereign immunity, of prosecutorial immunity, that it's hard to sue governments for failing to do their jobs. They're different than when Walmart allows a puddle at the entrance and 50 people slip and break their skulls. And when a government screws up, the law generally is adverse to bringing lawsuits. But I'm just telling you, it's gotten so bad we have to reassess that situation. Fairfax County, Virginia, another great example. And now the Beltway is like a raceway. It's like you're at a Formula One event with people going 100 miles an hour. Back when I practiced law in Fairfax 25 years ago, if you did that, you told your client to bring a toothbrush to court. You went to jail for weeks if you were caught speeding 100 miles an hour. But now it's going on all the time because there's a Soros prosecutor in Fairfax County.
Right. Well, and then, of course, when you look at Los Angeles and San Francisco, the same situation. And this extends further into criminal vagrancy, where the streets are no longer safe because, again, laws against public camping and criminal vagrancy are sleeping on the streets, living on the streets. They're just overlooked for the purposes of enforcing left-wing ideological politics. Ultimately, though, by focusing this as a civil rights issue, Christian Adams, do you think that this changes the conversation? And this is what conservatives and Republican lawmakers should begin doing. Sort of take back the idea that the civil rights here are actually for the innocent citizens who were subjected to these criminals, instead of the civil rights only being in the territory of the criminally accused.
And that's exactly why the United States Commission on Civil Rights voted to approve my plan to investigate this last year, to find out how it's affecting these people's civil rights. And then when we had to vote on the what's called the discovery plan, how you collect the evidence, suddenly the Democrats rose up and killed it all. They don't want the story told. They don't want people to know in minority communities what's causing all the crime, and that's why we're at a stalemate.
It's awful. Quickly, we've only got a minute left, but the Justice Department, federal law enforcement, they're supposed to oversee all of this stuff. They have a civil rights division. Is this on their radar?
No, because it's run by a lunatic named Kristen Clark, who used to be in the voting section where I worked, and she is hostile to all of these ideas. She drinks the Kool-Aid that the police are bad, that they're, as I said in the article, that they're the muscle of a racist, dystopian, capitalistic law enforcement. She hates the police, in my opinion. And so no chance that anything will happen there.
It's something that needs to change. And if that means getting a new president, getting a new Senate, and actually making the difference, that's what needs to be done. And certainly part of the conversation is the civil rights that we have. We have a civil right to live in a peaceful society. That shouldn't be a new concept, but strangely it is. J. Christian Adams, great stuff, very thought-provoking, and I hope everybody reads your article at the Washington Times. There's more to come. You're watching Salem News Channel, and this is O'Connor Tonight.